Today I'm going to show you how I turned this cardboard box into this. That's right, today we're making a cardboard Captain America shield from the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. As you can see, I added magnets to the shield, which basically allow you to catch the shield in midair, which is a very signature move we see a lot from Captain America in the movies. With the magnets, they also allow you to just throw it over your back just like that, and now you can walk around with the shield on your back just like Captain America. What do you think? Pretty cool, right? I'm basically Captain America now.
I am Captain America.
So to get started, the first thing I did was cut out a whole bunch of triangles out of some double corrugated cardboard. I made a template for this triangle shape, so if you want to give this a shot, you can just download and print it out. It's completely free, and the template should help you out because it's all pre-measured out, so it should give you a perfect dome shape. In total, I cut out 21 of these triangles, and as you can tell, I bent the cardboard a little bit to kind of put a bit of a curve on it, and that should give us a dome shape when we connect all these triangles together. As you can see, I just used my hot glue gun here to glue all the triangles together one by one, and I ended up dividing these up into different sections before gluing them together because I felt like I could maybe get a more accurate dome that way. Not really sure if that made a difference, but it just kind of felt right to do it this way. Now I put a roll of duct tape underneath the shield right at the center, and I'm going to temporarily tape down all the edges of the shield. This is just going to hold the shield down while I apply some resin on it to harden it and make the cardboard less flimsy. This part is kind of optional, but I just wanted to make sure my shield would stay rigid and maintain that curved shape. Next, I went ahead and drew a simple template for the shield. I did that by using a makeshift compass, which has all the correct measurements for the width of the rings. So I made all the rings 2.5 inches wide, and I made the center circle have a diameter of about 9.5 inches, which looked about right to me. Then I transferred that template onto foam board, also known as foam core. Now foam board is a really neat material. It's super cheap. It's like $1 per sheet at the dollar store. But the one downside to foam board is that the foam is prone to dissolving when you use any kind of aerosol spray on it. Since I'm going to be using spray paint on this shield, I had to protect that layer of styrofoam somehow. So what I did was I just mixed up some Mod Podge with a tiny drop of black paint and brushed that onto the edges of the foam board. And the black paint just helps with visibility. It lets me see where I'm brushing it on because the Mod Podge is clear. Before I could glue the foam board to the shield, I just marked out where I wanted the edge of the foam board to line up, and that way I can make sure that the spacing between the rings is correct. To glue the foam board to the shield, I'm going to use some contact cement. Now, I normally don't use contact cement very much because it kind of smells bad, but contact cement is perfect for what we're doing here. It's a very unique kind of glue. It's not like other adhesives. The way contact cement works is you apply a thin coat of it on both surfaces that you want to adhere together, and you let the two pieces dry before you stick them together. The reason contact cement works really well for this is because it gives me a lot of working time to position the ring exactly where I want it, and it also bonds very fast and very strong. The foam board will wrinkle a little bit here, but we're going to take care of that. I didn't have a large enough piece of foam board for this ring, so that's why I had to split it up into two pieces, as you can see. I took some screenshots from the show, and I can see that there's a bit of an edge right there, so for that I'm going to cut out some poster board and layer that on top of the foam board. I went through a lot of trial and error to get these poster board pieces to line up just right because I couldn't really find any other better way to size these pieces correctly, especially because this shield is made by hand, so it's never truly symmetrical. Even if you pre-measure the pieces, they will most likely misalign slightly, so I went through a lot of work just to get these pieces to line up. As you can see, I used 2 layers of poster board on the foam board, and that just helps to define the line more prominently. After that, I applied a layer of Dupli-Color filler primer, and I made sure to mask off the center of the shield because I wanted to avoid having the spray paint mix with the contact cement later on. Once that dried, I got some spackling and I'm going to apply that onto the shield to hide all the seams and make this whole thing look like one piece. Then when the spackling hardens, I can sand it down and blend it all together with the filler primer that we just put on to kind of make it all uniform and smooth. Once I'm happy with how that looks, I can use some more filler primer to prep the surface for paint. Now, if you want, after the filler primer dries, you can add even more spackling if you feel like it's not completely smooth, and then recoat it with more primer after that. You can basically just repeat this whole process until you're happy with how smooth it is, and then before painting, you can just lightly sand down the entire thing just to get rid of any unwanted texture still left on the surface. Now it's time to work on the silver ring. So once I cut out the ring, I once again coated the styrofoam in Mod Podge so it would not get dissolved by the paint. And once the paint dried, I contact cemented that ring to the shield. Now you actually don't need to paint the foam board silver here, I just painted it by mistake, but you can just leave the foam board unpainted because it's all just going to get covered up by poster board anyway. Also, for this silver ring here, you really do not need to put Mod Podge on the outer rim of the foam board. That was also another mistake I made. You just need to put Mod Podge on the inner rim this time because the outer rim of the foam board won't really be making any contact with spray paint. So just save yourself some time and you only need to put Mod Podge on the inner rim this time. Alright, and here's what the shield looks like after the foam board's been covered with poster board. For that detail line, I'm going to take a super sharp precision knife and just carve out that groove like this. Then I can take a thin little needle file and just score it to make the line a bit neater and be the same width all the way through. I masked off all the unwanted areas and then hit it with a layer of filler primer. Then after that, more spackling can be used to hide all the seams. For the silver, I decided to go with the Rust-Oleum 2X metallic aluminum spray paint, and that came out pretty nice. Now we're not quite done with the silver ring yet because as you might have noticed, the newer cap shield has these 5 little indents that run along the silver ring. So I divided the circumference of the silver ring by 5 and cut myself a piece of tape that length so I could use it as kind of like a spacer to equally space out the 5 points on the shield. Once I had all the points marked out where I wanted them, I cut out the notch using my precision knife. Then you'll see that I used my needle file to kind of squish the foam down to create like a little recessed area right there. And after that, I covered the little poster board piece in black Sharpie and just super glued that back into there. Careful not to use too much super glue though because it will melt the foam. Alright, and here I took some black acrylic paint and just simply brushed that next to the silver ring, and what that will do is just make sure that the crevice between all the rings is black. So on to the next ring. This time I learned my lesson and I only applied Mod Podge on the inner rim and left the outer rim alone because the outer rim won't really be making contact with spray paint. Once the Mod Podge dried, I contact cemented the foam board to the shield. Make sure you spread the contact cement evenly here and disperse it all the way out to the edge to really make sure you get a good stick because once you stick it together, there's no going back and you can't add more glue under the ring. And then once again, I super glued some poster board to the foam board to kind of skin the foam board and hide all its wrinkles. A really good technique I ended up finding is to make the poster board slightly bigger than it needs to be, and then once it's glued onto the foam board, you can run a sharp knife along the edge to make sure the two edges match up perfectly. Doing this eliminates a little bit of the guesswork and trial and error I was kind of doing before with the other rings. At this point, we need to make the centerpiece of the shield, which has the blue circle and the star in the middle. So for that, I printed a circle off of Google Images, and this circle is divided into 5 equal parts. So what I can do here is use a compass to draw a circle which has the diameter of the blue circle, then pin this template to the center of the blue circle, and then I can mark out those 5 points, which will help me find the 5 points of the star. Now there are some detail lines on the star, so to make those detail lines you can just cut out a section of the star, trim the edges off, and once you reinsert it back in there you'll end up with this nice clean detail line, as you can see right here. I transferred that star template onto poster board, painted it silver, and once the paint dries I can layer the poster board on top of the foam board. Now my foam board is already black, so I didn't need to paint the foam board, but if your foam board isn't black, you'll need to paint it black before gluing on the silver poster board pieces. That way the lines on the star will stand out like this. To make the blue circle, I used the template that we made earlier and once again trimmed off these edges here in order to make the detail line pop like on the real shield. I transferred the template onto foam board, coated the edges in Mod Podge, and painted them with a metallic blue spray paint. While the blue paint was drying, I again brushed on some black paint along the edges just like we did before. This time the blue foam board pieces don't need to be covered in poster board because they won't wrinkle due to how small the pieces are. To make the magnetic hand grip, I'm going to use EVA floor mat foam, which will help absorb some of the impact when the shield hits my arm. Here I just used a pen cartridge as a cookie cutter to punch out these holes, which will come into play later on. I applied some contact cement to the foam so that I could attach these pieces of binder board to the foam. This binder board here is going to allow me to attach the hand grips as well as the magnets, which kind of need something harder than EVA foam to sort of bite into. These right here are the slots for the leather hand grips, so I cut those out with my knife so that I could insert the leather grips through that slot. But before I did that though, I went ahead and attached my magnets. These are some really strong magnets that I found on Amazon, and they have holes in them already, which is really convenient, and I'm able to use some standard skateboard hardware to mount those onto the hand grip. Now the nuts are actually going to get covered up in just a second, so in order to be able to tighten the bolt in the future if it ever loosens, I secured the nuts onto the binder board using some 5-minute epoxy like this. This way you can still tighten or loosen the bolts without having access to the nuts, because as you just saw right there, I just covered that whole thing up with more EVA foam, and the reason I have to do that is so that the metal doesn't hurt me and like dig into my arm while I'm wearing it, if that makes sense. For the straps, I simply cut up an old belt that I had laying around and attached it on using those slots that I cut out in advance. This is what the finished hand grip looks like, and I was really pleased with how it turned out. The foam is very soft and squishy, so when the shield hits your arm, it absorbs the impact quite nicely, and it also conforms to the curve of the shield. Now, I had a whole bunch of these metal candle lids just kind of laying around, so I figured I would glue them onto the back of my shield since they have a pretty good magnetic force to them and they have a very wide surface area, which is exactly what I need for this. So I just went ahead and hot glued all of those lids one by one onto the back of the shield. For the shoulder harness, I decided to use these two old belts that I had just kind of collecting dust in my closet. What I did with these belts is I just connected them together into one long strip and then kind of formed like a figure 8 with them, and that way you can feed your arms through there and kind of wear it on your back like this. After that, I made two small holes in the leather right at the center where they intersect. And then I can use a screwdriver and a 10mm wrench to tightly secure this magnet onto the harness. Well, I'm really pleased with how this shield turned out, especially since this is my first time making a Captain America shield. That being said, this shield isn't perfect, and there's probably a lot of things I could have done differently to make it better. For one thing, the rings on the shield are a little bit warped, and from certain angles in the light, you can tell that it's kind of handmade. There's a lot of little imperfections, which is kind of hard to avoid when you're using a material like cardboard. So if you're going to make this shield, just be aware of that. If you want to avoid having that problem, maybe look into using some other material that's better suited, because cardboard kind of has its limitations. Oh, and maybe don't use cardboard to make this shield if you plan on throwing it around. Don't be dumb like me and throw this cardboard shield around, because you'll just end up wrecking all your hard work. Unless you're okay with your shield getting all banged up, only use cardboard if you plan on hanging this shield on a wall or on a shelf or something like that, which is probably what I should have done, but I gotta find a way to make these videos entertaining somehow, right? You know, in hindsight, it probably would have made a lot more sense to make this shield out of EVA foam, which is a lot more soft and durable, and you could probably throw it. Actually, my friend Greg over at Propway, he made his Captain America shield out of EVA foam, which is a lot more durable and soft, and you actually see him in the video, he throws his shield. So if you're looking to make a shield out of EVA foam, something that you can play around with and mess around with more, definitely check out his video and check out his channel. He's got a lot of great tutorials over there. Now, there's one really big mistake that I made on this shield, and if you're going to follow this video, you're going to want to make sure that you don't make this same mistake. Basically, the spackling that I put on the outermost red ring of the shield cracked at one point. And it wasn't the spackling's fault, it was my fault. And that is because I stacked all my seams together. And when you do that, you create this kind of weak point in the shield where it flexes ever so slightly, and that's what caused the cracking. What I should have done is stagger the seams so that all the seams are in different places. That way you're not trying to fill a gap that's like a 1/4 inch deep and then have it flex on you and crack. Luckily, I was able to fix this. I just had to go back and strip away some of the material, and I filled the gap with some 5-minute epoxy to make it rigid. Once the epoxy dried, I redid the entire process of priming, filling, sanding, painting. So it was a really annoying process to have to go back and do all of that work, but it was all worth it in the end, because here we are, and now I can say I'm Captain America.
I'm sorry, wait, who are you? Captain America.
If you enjoyed this video, then you'll probably like my previous video as well, where I made a pair of falcon wings out of cardboard, so click or tap the screen to check out that video. Thank you very much to my patrons for supporting me on Patreon, and thank you for watching this video.